Good evening. It's January 16th, 2024, and we're going to continue with our series from Tim Mackie called Eat This Book, just because it sounded fascinating to me from the start. On TheDustyFeet.com, in the Outside the Class section on there, we have the Eat This Book source video section set up for review. Because the purpose of Outside the Class is for you to listen to the in-class lecture first, right? That would be from the source video playlist and Tim Mackie. With this way of doing things, you can watch the video before we begin chatting. We still hope to keep these to around 15 and 20 minutes or so because we want to make them easy to catch and easier to catch up on. So we're going to continue our Eat This Book series with God Brings Blessing Out of Curse. And this is our conclusion of this section with part 7 on Outside the Class on the Dusty Feet. And of course, before we forget, if you find these kinds of podcasts useful, that's when you click the subscribe button. The reminders, they just help you. But if you think that these might be useful to others, that's when you click that like button, because that is the way that YouTube chooses to share these with more people if they wish. So eat this book. God Brings Blessing Out of Curse. This is our last part of this section, part 7. Okay, so when we left off, Abram, he was called by God in Haran, right, to go to a land that God promised to Abram and his ancestors. Okay, I want to take a little side tangent here and talk about something that Tim brings up. Because he talks about the virus is still here and it's spreading. Okay, so I have a slightly different paradigm view here that might be worthy of a thought. Because if God wanted the virus eradicated, really wanted the virus gone, he'd have made a clean sweep of it right after the flood, right? He would have started anew at ground zero, new humans. Yet, he chose not to. So maybe, although the virus is still here, and I still fully agree it's spreading, but that was God's choice and it's his concern. For us, we can choose to give ourselves over to the virus, or for us to struggle through its symptoms, we need to manage the symptoms. Because I have a whole different thought on the end, right? Since again, God is not starting over from the beginning, as in with 0 people, a fresh slate. We are still part of the equation, so there's more to think about. But it seems to me in my paradigm thinking, excuse me, that God will deal with the virus as he sees fit. This is going to be with his plan, with his kingdom in mind, and with his son, our Messiah. Ours is just to struggle with and manage the effects of this virus, right? And to live with others along the way, others infected possibly, but we don't want to give the virus more fertile ground to grow. Food for thought. Let's get back to Abram. Yes, Abram's story, as we will see, will eventually get us to the virus cure. Yet, this part of the story, Abram does not have a single idea about that, right? In his time and in his place, God communicating to him, he has no clue that the promises of God will lead to a Messiah, right? The cure. God does make a series of promises to Abram, very large promises, ones that are larger than really probably any of us can imagine, really, the ramifications. But this blessing, as Tim mentions, because it's going to affect the entire earth. I have a different view on the longer term thought, right? Because it's in the typical churchianity paradigm, I guess, that the Israelites failed, that they did not fulfill the promises. I don't see it that way. Because we are here today very much because of this very story and these promises, right? virus infected as we are. Because is our own story really anything near different? Are we really different from them? Or is it just that we're post Messiah? Yeah. And are we really any better post Jesus? Be honest. It's a brutal mirror. More food for thought. Again, we'll get back to Abram. Didn't know he'd eaten so many side dishes, yeah? Okay. So God is beginning the plan to spread salvation, right? Again, this is not in Abram's mind. He just sees it as a blessing to the rest of the planet. And of course, that ultimate impact will be for all of eternity. But you got to start somewhere. So God promises to Abram, right? He says, 1, I will bless you. 2, I will make your name great. 3, I will bless those that bless you. 4, I will curse those that curse you. And 5, all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. I've often thought about this next question, and it seems more complicated, at least than we think on the surface. Was this set of promises only for Abram directly, or does it infer to those that follow? Right? Think about that for a moment. Are the first 4 of those 5 only for Abram, or also for his lineage? Those that are the blessings to all of the earth. I ask that because it might, probably should, affect how one might treat and respect the children of Israel, these descendants of Abram, the Jewish people. You know, you might not agree with, and this is a whole different discussion of how they might choose to walk daily, honoring God and others. You know, that whole 2 greatest commandments thing. But then that we would denounce or not treat rightly this chosen blessing, this lineage of people from God to us being the nations. And in denouncing, replacing, not treating with respect, does that put us in the promise number 4 section? I love eating this book. I like how Tim brings up God choosing one to save the many, right? Because the blessing works the same way the virus does, by spreading from individual to individual. But remember that point, because I like it, but I have a feeling that maybe way down the road a while, we might have some challenges with this. Don't get me wrong, I very much believe that we should. We just might need to change some of our paradigms that we've built up along our way. Okay? Like Tim said, if we don't grasp the importance of Genesis chapter 12, then the rest of the virus cure story is going to be challenging, including Jesus. Tim brought up a word. I'm going to bring it up again, and I'll probably bring it up multiple times because I think it's a word that we have more challenges with than we think. Fulfill. Fulfill, right? It comes with expectations, I suppose. I guess the real question is, are they valid expectations? Is the promises of Abraham, remember, there are at least 5 parts. We haven't even gotten to more down the road to maybe consider some other things. But is it fulfilled? As in complete, done, no longer applies. I'm going to leave that thought hanging. Probably deserves a box with a very big, colorful bow so that we can get right back to it when we need to. But Tim reminds us that the story started in Genesis 1 with one man and one woman. Then we get the section just before Abram, We have that whole world picture. Remember Babel? Yeah. And now we're right back to one man and one woman, Abram and Sarai. Because this Abram story, this is the response. This is how God will begin the long, slow, learning, eventful journey that leads us to the Messiah. And still longer yet down the road to us, and then beyond. Tim brings up the term that this Abram line story is like the antivirus. It's the real beginning, not only of repair, but of reconciliation. Okay, open a box. Probably have another question to stick in it. Because is this only for an eternal story? As in, the only purpose of this is to be only for the eternal view? And is that how Abram saw it? Okay, that was more than one question. But I contend that this is very much a this life affecting story, that the life of Abram and his lineage affects our everyday life and the choices that we still need to make today. So Tim mentions that the Israelites, the folks that are beginning their story with Abram, are just as screwed up as everybody else. And I'll add, that's just like us today. We're no different. But I think when we begin this story, we might make a false assumption. Maybe that these folks are supposed to be different from us, that they should or would be different from us. And yet, from what we're reading, this is not what happens. Yes, they are chosen people. They are set apart by God to be an example for us. Remember, the nations to see, to be given a land and a way to live, right? I realize we're not there yet in the story. Still, they will be the folks with the same virus that we have. They are not virus free, and neither are we. That wasn't part of the promise deal. I think we forget sometimes that Jesus' sacrifice on the cross took care of the virus. Truly, it was the antivirus to stop it from killing us for eternity, because the virus, it will not be going forward. Yet, now we are still on this earth. Now. And the virus is still running amok. It is still running rampant all around. Tim has this graphic, and I kind of like it. It says that Jesus was the culmination at the cross, right? He used the phrase that he bore Israel's sin, shame, foolishness, evil. Then he clarified that it was not only for Israel, but all of us. We get a glimpse of that in John chapter 3. But I like the loop in this graphic, that it brought us back to all of mankind, that this event was a virus cure for us all. You know, for sure, we have the fortune, right, to look back and see, we read all about this unfolding, to see the works of God in their lives. And then that gives us the confidence that he's going to do the same for us, even when we act the way that we do, often with virus unchecked. That's a loaded statement for sure, right? Because we're going to need to continue to unpack that particular part as we continue eating this book. Because God is rescuing, he's redeeming, he's restoring all of mankind, right? The virus cure is available for all. You know, this is one of those virus cures that can actually go back and affect the source. There's no such thing in our own science world, right? I don't even recall a science fiction story like this, right? All we have are like time travels back to fix things. But in God's world, going back up the strain, such a thing can and did happen. We needed to get to Genesis chapter 12. Tim tells us this because the first 11 chapters, they give us a picture of the origin, the spread, the depth, the width of this virus, right? But it's also told us that God would stay with his creation. He is devoted to us, even with the virus. Because Genesis 12 and beyond, well, that is the beginning, the development, and the growth of the cure, the antivirus. Because we need all of the story. We need to know all of it. Because this is just the start. Because there is this virus, and there is a cure. God knows all about it. And he's going to be with us through the effects of the virus, and then that he offers the blessing out of curse, the antivirus. Jesus, the cure, right? So I think I want to stretch this science analogy just a little bit further. I'm not sure how good it is or if it's going to work at this analogy, but I want to stretch it. Jesus' blood, it provides an antidote. The antibodies, the antivirus is in there. And we all need it. For our time on Earth, we will still have to live through the residual effects of this virus, right? We'll have to come to live through the symptoms as they come and go. God does give us some instructions to help deal with the symptoms, to show folks that the cure is real. And we'll be getting into those and more, right? As we continue moving forward and we continue more of eating this book. We enjoyed these parts of God's bringing blessing out of curse, and we're going to continue this series with this next section, which is God brings life out of death. Yeah? Because eating this book, that's one thing. But I suspect digesting it might be a bit more challenging. But thanks for with us tonight on another Outside the Class on the Dusty Feet.